Would anybody like to speak against the proposal? If, again, I know you know the drill, but name and address, please.
My name is Robert Miller, M9124 Humphrey Lane. I was town chairman when I'm here to speak to the parking area.
Sure.
At that time, John created a cutout into the hill along Springer's Ridge Road. And he did so without a permit. And I specifically met with him at night. We're gonna look at that. We had, I asked him to see the permit at that time. He didn't have it with him. I told him it was supposed to be posted on the site before work was done. My site viewing took place early in the morning, after midnight. He was doing the work with lights and a tractor at night, with dumpster, pump trucks. The next day I called the county, about the permit, and I talked to Debbie Ruby, who was the zoning officer for that at that time. And she specifically told me that there wasn't a permit, and that she had a discussion with John, and he asked if a permit was necessary for excavation. She said, she told him, I think if it was less than 10 yards or 8 yards, he would know. It wasn't necessary. If you've been to the site, by my estimate, probably 1,000 yards were moved and hauled out of there. Because of that situation, we had meetings with Debbie Ruby, Chief Jim Surgis was chief of police at the time, and the county sheriff. And they came out and looked at the site and had great concerns about where the parking would be because of the way the road curve, and it's kind of a blind entry. It's all irrelevant. John pleaded that it was harmful for him to make restoration, because that was the first suggestion. And that his intention was, there was an old hunter's cottage, I'll call it, on the site, and he was gonna take that down and build a house.
Could you just make sure that you just put your comments towards us? We don't want to escape our comments.
He was gonna build a house in the footprint of the old cottage, which never happened, and the cottage is gone. As a result, when this mistake on my part, we agreed to let him keep it. However, per the permit, and that's why I suggest that the planning commission in town look at the permit, because there was a clause in there that said he could park one, I think the maximum was 2 personal vehicles, not for business.
So you're saying he got a permit retroactively?
He had a retroactive permit. The work was complete before he had his permit. Second, with those disclaimers in it, he signed it back at that time. He didn't have to make restoration, but was limited to 2 personal vehicles. Over the years, he didn't do a good job of that. He parked dump trucks in there.
Bring in your paperwork.
School buses in there. He was, I believe, cited by the town several times. Cars that he was using it as a parking, and that was the concern. You gotta find the permit. I don't have access to it. I'm sure the county's got a copy, and I think possibly the town does. But that being said, he wants to follow the rules and the orders. If he agreed to make it a personal vehicle parking area at that time, I don't see where he can come back in now and say, I want to do business parking. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Beth Lamb. I live at W1544 South Shore Drive. I am speaking tonight for the Protect Lake Beulah organization regarding Mr. Stosa's request for the conditional use permit for a marina on his property. I personally attended the December county meeting where his rezoning took place from C4 to C2, and that part was approved. The drone pictures that were presented at that meeting made the situation much more clear to me. The county approved a rezone of part of his property for a parking lot, I think. But the foot or two of property along the lake remains C4. Today, he's asking for a conditional use permit to create a marina at the lakefront. Since the actual lakefront remains C4, we do not see how this would be possible or appropriate, and believe it actually is contrary to the Wisconsin law, which mandates special protections to these critical habitats. Walking to boats or piers or driving boats to the shoreline would entail walking through and or disturbing what remains sensitive area of the C4 zoning. Additionally, we would ask that you require a new certified survey that defines the wetland delineation of this area, since the area has been disturbed since it was last, a certified survey was last done. We would like to point out that there has never been a marina in a C4 delineated area in the state of Wisconsin. We would ask that you do not approve this conditional use request. In addition, I would like to read a part of a letter from Jennifer Thorsch, who is a current board member of the Protect Lake Beulah organization. Jennifer's husband's grandparents bought property and built a house on Lake Beulah in 1936. Jennifer and her husband are owners of this property on Humphrey Lane today. Jennifer holds a PhD in plant sciences. She's the founding director of something called the Cheadle Center for Biodiversity and Ecological Restoration at the University of California, Santa Barbara. In her capacity as director of that group, she was responsible for the protection, management, and restoration of over 350 acres of sensitive marine habitats on the university campus. The area being proposed for this conditional use as a marina is of critical importance to the environmental health and preservation of this sensitive habitat on Lake Beulah. Quoting from the Wisconsin DNR website, sensitive areas of lakes are designated as critical habitat areas in Wisconsin. These areas comprise of aquatic vegetation identified by the Wisconsin DNR as offering critical or unique fish and wildlife habitat, including seasonal or life stage requirements, or offering water quality or erosion control benefits to the body of water. Wisconsin law mandates special protections for these critical habitats. It is important to note that areas surrounding the critical habitat may have impacts on these areas, including development, runoff, and improper use. Therefore, it is critical to prevent areas surrounding the critical habitat from causing irreparable damage to these sensitive areas. The proposed site for conditional use is also important because the origin of the water flow to the site is Pickerel Creek, which is a diverse, high-quality sedge meadow and fen. The sedge meadow and fen grades into a high-quality tamarack swamp and then into an emergent marsh featuring cattails and bulrushes. The site is included in the Pickerel Lake Fen, in the Sewer Pack and Walworth County Natural Areas plans, and is designated as a natural area of statewide importance. From an environmental standpoint, Jennifer recommends no development in the C4 area. That includes boats, mooring, moving through this area, disrupting the vegetation and the lake bottom. Again, we would ask that you do not approve this conditional use request.
So the only one thing I'll just respond is according to Michael Cotter, the attorney for Walworth County. He says C4 zoning district allows for hiking, fishing, trapping, hunting, swimming, boating as permitted use. C4 also allows boat access as a conditional use. Obviously, piers and boats are allowed in the water. In other words, landward use of marina proposed on the C4 area, crossing the C4 strip of land access would be used as it would be allowed under C4 to basically cross perpendicular or whatever across the C4 from the C2. Again, I'm not defending anyone. This is just what I
But
found out.
the additional complexity is the fact that this is a special, what's the term?
Environmental.
Area of Special Natural Resource Interest, ASNRI. That's the additional twist to this particular
Sure.
part. Correct.
Thank you.
I was never.
Just signing W 1969 Silver Road. I just have two additions. You did mention that, Cotter so you can walk across. What he's not saying though, is C4 is not for business or for marina, so he should have clarified that because it is C4 and he's asking for a marina, that is not allowed to use, C2 to cross onto C4. That is as if you have a wall saying, you don't cross for business
Not
purposes.
according to Michael Cotter.
Well, I would challenge that
Understood.
clarification.
Yes,
Otherwise, why do we even have C4 and C2?
I totally agree with you.
It's a, that needs to be clarified big time. Because I don't see how you could cross over and have a business. And then on top of it, what he's really saying to us, he actually has a cart before the horse here. He should have actually come to this meeting with a permit in hand. And what he's doing is he's asking for business moorings when he doesn't technically even have a business right now. So it doesn't make sense to me. And the other thing that I would point out is what he's really telling us is what we were talking about crossing over. What he's really saying is he has for a business, basically saying that gives me the right to run a marina through C4. It's wrong. And the other thing is the delineation should be required because if you take a ride there today, in winter, I have never seen a shoreline. I'll start with the peninsula piece of the property against the road, sticks out, comes to a perfect square. What shoreline do you see that comes to a square and then does a perfect cut across? And then guess what? As soon as the lot line ends, when his neighbor shows up, it's wetland, it's in the water. So for him to say he's not disturbing, that is a crack, and you should demand the delineation. Because he is basically taking earth off the shoreline, moving him closer to C2, which is illegal.
Thank you.
My name is Troy Giles. Address is N16W23250 Stone Ridge Drive in Waukesha. I'm an attorney and I work with the Lakeview Management District. Just a couple things. I sent a letter to the Planning Commission and I wanted to know if that will be accepted into the record without me having to read the entire thing this evening.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just a couple notes, I know we've talked a lot about the C4 zoning and whether or not, and the operation of a marina in it. I just wanna, make one additional comment, regarding why I also think it's inappropriate and a CUP would not apply in this instance because the shoreland is entirely, C4 zoning. I had a number of people in our office research the matter of split zoning and figure out what that really means in the state of Wisconsin. It's a highly undesirable zoning classification is the bottom line. It's akin to spot zoning and it leads to a number of different problems. But the overwhelming authority that I've placed in that letter states, guidance from Wisconsin municipalities state that split lot zoning requires that each section of the split zone lot must meet the requirements of the district in which it lies. In other words, you've got a marina that's being proposed here that is adjacent to and appurtenant to land that is zoned C4. That is inconsistent. Does not adjoin, it is not adjacent to C2. But what the applicant has managed to do here is to put a parking lot and other surfaces based upon a 13-year-old survey in an area that is zoned C2. Look at the definitions of both C2 and C4 zoning. Both of those are dedicated to the preservation of environmental characteristics, of the betterment of the environment, of the protection of natural resources. Look at the opening part of it, C4 zoning. It's summarized in my letter. It's right there for you. It's taken verbatim from the zoning code. They are to protect natural resources. This doesn't do any of that. Okay, that's point number one I want to make. Second thing, how are we possibly here without the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources giving their opinion about this? The number of slips that are being requested under this proposal exceed what would be permissible under Chapter 30 of the Wisconsin State Statutes. In order to get 10 slips on a property that is roughly 119 feet wide, using a meander line, which is the proper method of calculation, not using a wheel and running around and measuring the entire distance. There's 10 slips on a property that is being 119 feet wide. That will require him to go through the individual permitting process that is set forth in Chapter 30. It's all set forth in this law. Okay? Grandfathering. Grandfathering, you just heard the applicant say that he did not and is not operating a marina, right? Or at least he challenged one of you here as to whether that's happening. Grandfathering, whether or not a pier system is grandfathered, is whether or not you can prove to the DNR beyond a shadow of a doubt, the burden is on the applicant to show that the number of slips that exceed what the state of Wisconsin requires were in effect as of April 17, 2012. Okay? You have to show that to the DNR. They have to look at it. They look at aerial photography. They take records. They do everything they can to establish that. And it's a fairly high bar. And I don't know if anybody here has read the case involving this same property that was decided by the Wisconsin Appellate Court, but the court concluded as West Rod did not meet its burden to show that Fred's Tap had an active and actual boat slip rental marina operation prior to the adoption of the county shoreline zoning ordinance in 1971, or that it actively continued such an operation as more than an occasional and incidental use, we affirm the decision of the circuit court.
Friends Tap's a separate property.
But look at the case. The
It's
case
regardless.
defines the property that they were using as being both Fred's Tap and the one across the street. They're combining the two in this decision. Okay?
I didn't read the decision,
It's
I'm
there.
not arguing with you.
Do you have a copy of the decision?
I don't.
So, okay, going back to a few of the things. We've talked about C4 and C2 zoning. This is in an area of natural resources special interest. There are higher standards that the DNR will look at before they entertain allowing more slips than what is allowed under state law. And I think everybody else has probably covered most of the stuff, but again, we are disappointed in the way it's been zoned, the change that's been made, it leads to confusion, but the Lake District is adamantly opposed to the operation of a marina at this location.
If you wouldn't mind,
Mr. Giles,
Yes.
what is your experience that allows you to take the positions you're taking? You're an attorney?
I'm an attorney. I write the environmental section of the Wisconsin State Bar book that is published throughout the state every single year. I work for a law firm that has 220 lawyers. I specialize in both real estate and wetland laws. I've worked on these types of marinas throughout the state of Wisconsin, from the northern part of the state to the southern part of the state. I've got active matters going right now in Dane County, Jefferson County, Wapaka, Waushara, throughout the state. So I'm pretty familiar with these issues.
Okay, so you make the point in your letter that you don't believe that a marina serves the purpose of the intention of C two.
Correct.
Okay. And the applicant has committed to us that he's gonna meet the purpose and intent of C two, so that's the big discrepancy we have here. And you state in your letter that, the C two conditional use does not include a parking lot.
Correct.
It includes a marina, but it doesn't include a parking lot.
That's right. That's right.
Okay? And I believe you also point out that, if I understood you, please clarify, that, a marina, is not compatible, since the property is in a area of special national resource interest. A marina would be incongruous with that.
I agree with that. Look, we're talking about, no matter how anybody tries to sugarcoat it, this is a commercial operation. This isn't necessarily providing access for people on a daily basis. This is to rent boat trips for the purpose of making money. It's a commercial operation, okay? We've got areas, my understanding, in talking to some of the folks from the DNR and some other water law attorneys, that Lake Beulah's got problems with traffic. There are a lot of people on this lake that use it, and it suffers a lot from traffic. We've got sensitive areas that are being affected by increased traffic. The operation of a commercial marina in an area of sensitive resources is a dangerous combination. One other thing I did forget to mention too is that maybe my memory is wrong, but when I was here in June listening, here in the audience, I thought the planning commission had asked for, and the applicant had agreed to provide an updated wetland delineation. And the importance of that is that we now see it is the line that determines where the zoning begins and ends between C4 and C2. If there's been any sort of land manipulation, filling, grading, things done potentially without the consent of the DNR, or without having them be permitted, a wetland delineation needs to pick that up, and that needs to be respected. So I have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else in the audience like to speak? Please.
You said you didn't have a copy of this.
Thank
On page 3 of it, this was an appeal. I was at the courthouse 2 weeks ago. They could not find the case number original. In fact, their words were, "How did you get that?" Right on the bottom, it says, "This opinion will not be published." You read the last page. Anyhow, page 3, Waller County issued a citation for operating a marina, C4 zone district, Waller County zoning ordinance. 3-day trial circuit court concluded West Rock failed to show predominance, how do you pronounce it, of the evidence that the marina operation was a legal, non-conforming use and imposed a $663 forfeiture. West Rod appeals. This is the appeal. The last page is what the attorney read to you. He's been using that property as a marina since this county has done absolutely nothing. Why? I mean, I called him on other things involved with this. This is like a copy. Anyhow, that's my opinion. He's been doing it for 10 years. Who cares? County don't care. Why should he have to get any permits to do it? County doesn't care, he's doing it now. Why should he have to go to you, go to the town, go to county zoning? He's been doing it for 10 years and was fined by the judge. That's a circuit court order. That's all I got to say right now.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience like to speak?
I'd like to, if I could